as we get in here, I'll just pause it and we'll go along. Kimi's quite clearly at this point. You could see, I'll tell you what, we'll just go onto his onboard. And at this point, you would argue that Kimi's in front. He's got his nose in front, and he looks, crucially, fully in control of the car. He looks to me like he's on a trajectory and a speed that suggests he is going to stay within track limits and make the corner. Now, if we just go back, this is where we can't see George's steering input. Does he open up the wheel and edge Kimi out wide? And hopefully we'll get that on board later today. But at this point, we'll just move it along. This is what Kimi's talking about. They make a little bit of contact there, and quite clearly, there isn't a Kimi Antonelli Mercedes width within there. So he's saying, I was forced off the track. I wasn't given a full car's width, despite the fact that I was fully alongside. And he's got a point there, but where it gets... so there you go, Simon. A lot for Mercedes to ponder between now and qualifying.
I think it is a lot to ponder, Corinne, and I think that your first images that you showed, the side-by-side, particularly from Kimi's, is really, really interesting. And I guess what I'm left thinking, and maybe viewers at home are left thinking, is should it be that the team needs to complain to the stewards for that to be looked at? Surely when you have an incident like that, then when a driver's pushed off track, that it should automatically be looked at without one complaining, one team doing a he said, she said, and why do we leave it to Mercedes to deal with internally?
It's a really good question. It never came up, did it? It never came up that the stewards were looking at it, or it didn't even say, I don't think it even said it was noted or an incident. So you're absolutely right. It seemed to be something that, just for people at home to understand the procedures, the race director will look at anything that happens on track, and if he thinks that the stewards need to go into it and investigate any further, he will escalate it upstairs to the stewards. So what we don't know, standing here of course, is whether the race director did that, and if he did, then did the stewards look at it and just think it's fine? We don't know that, and we need to check with the FIA.
Can we just go back to the onboard, if we could, Karun, just to recheck? There's three parameters, right, for the car overtaking on the outside. We say you've got to be sufficiently alongside, as we've said, axle to axle, front axle. Decision to leave him that car's width. Do you believe he still would have been able to make that corner?
Yeah, if George had slowed right down and gone somewhere there, leaving a car's width, that's the question you're asking me.
Yeah.
I think Kimi was under control enough. Let's pretend for a minute that George is not there and Kimi's just gone wide and missed the apex. I think he had slowed down enough, and he looked in control enough at that point to have made the corner and stayed in track. So yeah, to answer your question, I think he would have. I think it would have been tight, and he would have landed probably, maybe, on the white line, sort of straight onto that curb, but he would have made it, I think.
And then Martin, let's go up to the commentary box, and then he would obviously have the right to the next corner there. I mean, it looks really marginal, actually, more marginal than I think that we initially thought, and perhaps that Mercedes thought when Toto was communicating with them over team radio. Having had another look at what Karun said there, what's your thoughts now, Martin?
I agree completely. Had it been two different teams, the losing team in that incident would have been pushing hard with race control. You can see also that George Russell hits the inside curb. His car bounces, which is what's walked him to the right-hand side. I do agree that Antonelli was under control. The problem with writing regulations for so many different types of incident on different track layouts, it's virtually impossible to cover everything. So it's an element of interpretation. But something that was added in this year is that the driver on the inside can't just disappear. There's almost that terminology, recognizing that, okay, I've got to give you a car's width, but I'm carrying speed, I'm racing, I'm wheel to wheel in a Formula One race. I can't just evaporate or suddenly change by 30, 40 degrees and head off and give you that car's width, especially as it's so transient, that moment when he was alongside the mirror, he was alongside the front wheel axles, so a really difficult one. I think if you sling your car around the outside like that, you have to expect to get squeezed. Personally, that's the racing view. I just, in some other incidents, because yes, they treat turn 1 and turn 2 there as one chicane based on what happened in turn 1, it must be said, the first part of it. So it's hugely complicated. I wouldn't have given George Russell a penalty in that instance is my bottom line.
I completely agree. I think that's the thing. When you're going around the outside, you either have to be so committed that you are cleared well and truly before the apex. That's what Kimi did do quite a good job of. And if anything, I think that caught George out on the apex, that, Kimi had committed so aggressively, but George can't disappear. And the other thing is you have to be side by side in that moment to avoid you both getting into each other. If wider picture, looking at this championship, that's not something that I think would have boded well for the rest of his season. He had to be aggressive in that moment.
I think you've got to look. I don't know if you agree with me here. The psychology of that play too. I mean, like the way he came back in sprint qualifying, 3/10 off, as I said, of the first flying lap in SQ3, came back to within almost half a tenth. We know that this is such a strong track for George, but with the momentum he's got, he was not. I mean, he was giving no quarter there, and that's what he's going to have to do. It felt like a kind of a seminal moment in the career progression, didn't it, of Kimi Antonelli? He's raw, he's still aggressive, but he's going to learn from it. George's side would argue that that's a mitigating factor.
Yeah, I think he would argue that, and I think, as Jamie pointed out, it's about how does he have the ability to change his sort of angle going through the corner. I think that he's got to have expected Kimi's coming. He knows the deployment that they'll have in that point. He'll be looking in his mirrors. I'm sure someone's telling him in his ears the gaps down the straight. So could he have expected a bit more? But I think the bump and many things, and like you said, when they get into that engineering office, there'll be many replays of the videos and analysis to try and get a sort of neutral grounding on the decision.
And a stern talking to by the headmaster, Toto Wolff. Here he is with Ted.
Well, Toto, for a baby race, we saw some very grown-up fighting there. What was your view?
Yeah, it was great cinema, no? Tough fighting, not only between our two, but also with Lando, and further back, enjoyed watching it.
But the fighting did mean that you let in a McLaren for P2.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see how quickly it goes. You create a gap with two cars, and then you start to fight a bit, and you can lose a race. If that goes longer and a bit unlucky for us, and it's the Grand Prix, Norris may well win.
Okay, so then how do you see it? Do you think it was all fair? Does Kimi have a point at all? Does George have a point when he said afterwards, "I'm glad we're both standing here after the race because it could have been different"?
I really enjoy these moments because it allows us to learn and to say, okay, what are we doing with this situation? How are we handling that in the future? Because you don't want to lose a race, you don't want to crash into each other, and sometimes it needs a little moment to remind ourselves what our objectives are. And this is not particularly against one or the other, but there's a framework that we want to establish, and I'd rather have it in a sprint race where it's not about a lot of points than in the main race.
Okay. Is what you're saying then the intention behind your radio messages to Kimi?
Yeah, it's, we don't want to start with race 5 and have headlines like Star Wars or this is escalating, because it's not. It's in the emotion, and he's a young driver, and I think George would have probably done the same, so we just need to see how we handle it.
Okay, thanks very much, Toto.
He's dealt with far worse than this, let's face it. One word, Nico Rosberg. I have 2 words, Lewis Hamilton. But with regards to this, it's, as you said, he's a young pup. He's clearly Italian emotion coming out in the cockpit there.
It is, but actually I was really impressed by Kimi because he was obviously frustrated in the car. You could hear that on the radio. Watching the onboard back, I didn't see it at the time. That bump made a big difference. It looked like he had gone in full steam ahead, hot-headed in the second move at turn 8, but actually that was more the bump that caused that. And what was impressed me is when he got out of the car and he was interviewed under the podium, that's when he seemed to kind of grab his composure. He listened to Toto, who told him, we'll discuss this privately, we won't discuss it now. I'm sure he'd be frustrated internally, but he did quite a good job to compose himself that quickly, and I think he's going to keep learning, and he's already very impressive as it is.
Nico Rosberg is 2 words, by the way. Just to I can't count, but you know what I meant, one name. Yeah, I mean, Toto's good at this. He's never, he doesn't want what he's had before. And this is the whole point. These are two guys that have come through their young driver program. I would argue that he's got them more in his pocket than the other 2 the aforementioned drivers, as we were saying. There's a debrief there, and he's Andrew Shovlin and Pete Bonington, who's Kimi's race engineer. And Bonner's doing the same, really. He was just trying to calm it down, keep a level head. Need to take emotion out of it.
Yeah, so I was going to say a few things. One, leave the numbers to me, Simon.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, I should have learned that years ago.
The other thing is, Bono's been here before. Toto, like you say, have been here before. It's not the first time, but it is the first time with these 2 drivers. and it is very much the first time for Kimi to experience this. So they're going to have to set some ground rules pretty quickly because they're racing tomorrow again. And I suspect, let's see how qualifying happens, they're not going to be that far away from each other on the grid. So if there's new ground rules to be made, they need to be got on top of. But it is about trying to get the best out of both without losing positions. In this race, it only made 1 point position to have that McLaren in the middle. But in the main race, it's going to be quite a big difference.
Well, we enjoyed it. No doubt about it. That was an eventful sprint, wasn't it? And when we come back...
Hi, Charles. In a sprint like that, it's difficult to do much, I guess. You did make up a place, but what have you learned that you can take into qualifying this afternoon and for the race tomorrow where you could look at?
There were quite a few things yesterday out of place, especially on the brakes. But today was better. I probably took a bit more time than what I would have wanted to get more comfortable with the car. But on a track like this, brakes is everything. And yesterday was very tricky. So hopefully in qualifying, I get this feeling back and we can finish in the top 3 or somewhere close. Because I feel like today we pay the price mostly of our starting position. Because the pace wasn't that bad and I felt like I had a good pace in the car. But yeah, starting P6 and being stuck really behind Oscar was tricky. He was very fast in the straights and we are very fast in corners. That's been a bit the story since the beginning of the year. So yeah, well, we'll see.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Their key advantage, or different tracks, is kind of mitigated a little bit here, isn't it, off the line, and it's such a short run down to turn 1.
Exactly, and they seem to be struggling generally with straight line performance. So again, something that hurts them a bit here. But Lewis out the blocks was very fast. First half of that race, he looked really in contention to even be fighting for the podium at one point. So I think there might have been a bit of tyre management that came into it, a bit of graining and things. But yeah, their pace at one point looked pretty strong. It was just at the end of the race that it seemed to fall away for them.
Yeah, I think that normally, like Jamie says, they've been very good. I think particularly at Highfield, so particularly at the main race start is where their advantage has really been. Impressive they didn't bring any upgrades this weekend, so I think where they are is strong. But I think there is some work still to be done in terms of that tyre management towards the end of the races where they seem to fade. And that the reason they have the fast start is because they have this small turbo, we believe, and that is probably hurting them on the straights here, the longer straights. So this is a track that probably doesn't suit that Ferrari chassis.
Just a quick one looking ahead to the race on what we saw, what we picked up from that sprint there was that obviously you're saying about the starts for Ferrari, but actually we thought at one stage you were like Mercedes, they're away and gone here. They were pulling a real gap, and then after about 4 or 5 laps, Lando in particular started coming back at them.
That's a bigger question, and I think actually George would have attacked the start of that race harder than he would have liked to, having Kimi so closely on his heels. They then dropped the rest of the pack, but it's interesting as they fell back into the McLarens, they didn't have much of an answer, and I do wonder if George was doing that a bit intentionally to keep him in that kind of overtake mode a bit with Kimi, but they definitely didn't have the advantage that we saw at the beginning of the race.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Jamie said there, and I think that the Mercedes, we've seen it year in year out, where the McLaren tyre management has been the strength of the field, and I think that the Mercedes maybe used a little bit too much of those tyres earlier on. Complaints of them being too cold on George's car earlier on in the race, so something for them to look at there for later on this afternoon and into tomorrow.
Right, we're hanging out here.
Oscar, it was a great race to watch, but was it a case for you of being patient and waiting for that opportunity, or was there anything more in the car if you'd had a few more laps?
It was a bit tricky, just like stuck in dirty air, and I couldn't really do much. And I mean, even when I got past, it was not easy. So I think as the race went on, I was getting quicker and quicker compared to Lewis. But yeah, just not an easy way past.
All right, thanks, Oscar.
Oscar, is the first time you have seen more difficulty in overtaking? Thinking about this season?
Not necessarily. I think it's a similar story to what it has been all year. It was definitely tricky to follow and tricky to get ahead for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think here it's quite well balanced actually, because the overtake I made on Lewis wasn't easy, so it was good.
Grazie.
That was George just having a quick watch on the sky pad, as aided by Karun. Let's just walk through the melee. Well done, first of all.
Thank you.
Congratulations. What did you make of the ding dong with your teammate?
I mean, I didn't really make a lot of it, to be honest. It's always a challenging corner to overtake on the outside of.
You hit the curb as well. Did that kind of
Who did I?
change your? Yeah, just have a quick look at it.
Not really, but it's always one of those that when you've got one corner leading into the next, it's very easy for the outside driver to brake late, much later than you would do ordinarily. But the inside driver is only going one direction. I was just taking my normal line into turn 2, and that's all I say really.
There's a little bit of inevitability, I guess, seeing both Mercedes with the pace advantage you seem to have coming together at some point. Has there been anything discussed prior to this weekend?
I mean, it's always been discussed in the years gone by. You know, you race each other hard but fair, and you know, from my side, there's never ill intentions towards anything. But on the same note, I'm not just going to wave somebody by, and you know, we're both fighting for our championship, but it's always the team first, and look, we'll both talk about it after for sure. But for me, I've got the peace of mind that it wasn't investigated, and you know, if the FIA think it was fine, then that's enough.
We've had a look at it, and you know, Karim was saying it's pretty marginal in terms of where he was positioned with his front axle, for example, and you know, whether you should have left a car's width there. You wouldn't have heard the team radio. He was convinced that you'd forced him off. Obviously, there was a lot of emotion over team radio there. It calmed down a bit, but he also said it in your post-race interview there. So, I mean, how do you react to that? But also, what do you say to him now? I mean, we get this all the time, don't we, intra-team battles, but how will you approach this with Kimi?
I got to be honest, I'm focused on trying to get pole position this afternoon. So, you know, we need to have a chat. You know, it is inevitable that if you've got two cars qualifying 1-2 most weeks, you're going to have some close racing. But, you know, we do respect one another. It isn't the intention to ever collide, and the fact that we're both here standing and, you know, we finished 1-3, could have been 1-2. I don't think it's a big deal.
Aside from the incident, the rest of the race looked a little bit more challenging. McLaren closing pace. Was there an element of you intentionally holding him there to keep Kimi in third, or was that just the pace at the end of the race?
It was difficult for Lando to sort of make the overtake, so it was kind of quite a nice buffer because I was confident Kimi would have a bit more pace, and these sprint races are challenging to pass. So it was just kind of a case of bringing it home. Lando also had the new tyres that we didn't. We know there's a high chance of rain tomorrow, but we kept our new tyres for tomorrow. So, yeah.
Last one. I know you came into this weekend, people were heaping pressure on you, saying, you know, after the 3 wins for Kimi, that this is one you've got to win, bearing in mind your success round there. How much of a statement was that for you, George? And what do you want to achieve, obviously, for the rest of the weekend? If you can have a clean weekend, win this race,
I think it's more of a bigger deal for you guys than it is for me, to be honest. You know, I just came into this weekend as any other. I know my struggles as a driver, which are on tracks like Miami, and there's a couple more later in the season, but that's, excuse me, for me, has been there for a long time in my career, but nobody's really picked it up because when you're not fighting for wins, it just sort of goes under the radar. So it was no real drama for me, and just back in the groove now.
Well
Thank
done,
you.
George. Keeping it calm. Appreciate it. There we go. We'll let him get into that debrief. And yeah, I wonder what will be said by Toto Wolff. Right, we're going to wrap things up.
Hi, Kimi. Can you tell me about the battle you had with your teammate and your part in it, if you're happy with all the moves, and whether or not you think it maybe cost you a win or points?
Yeah, for sure the win, it cost. I think the pace was very strong, but of course it's really hard to say, but I feel like overall was a hard battle. It felt a bit unfair in the moment, I'm not going to lie, but I think also emotion runs very high, and it's difficult for us to stay very cool because, you know, when you go on track, I always try to give my best, and I wasn't trying to settle for seconds. So, yeah, it was a hard battle, but now for sure we'll clarify with the team, and then we'll focus on the qualifying.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that's it. I mean, he's just like George, right? He's got to get his head in gear for qualifying.
Well, yeah, me and Jimmy were just chatting as we were listening to that clip there, and it's how mature is that for him to come out and that calm. He was very, very uncalm in the car, very excited, very passionate. That's what we expect from these drivers, and then very calm when he gets to the pen.
Completely agree. I think you're naturally going to have that emotion in the car, but the fact that he's got out, reviewed it, he's not going to be happy, but he can have a different perspective to the media, and that's impressive. There's a lot of drivers that wouldn't be like that on the current grid that I think as a teenager is above his years.
Yep. Okay. Max Verstappen finished in 7th. Here is the four-time world champion.
Hi, Max. We heard you on the radio yesterday talking about what you were dealing with in the car. Did you find any fixes overnight, and how are you feeling taking this car into the rest of this weekend? Is there a lot of work to do?
Well, I mean, you can't touch the car, so hopefully for qualifying we can make some changes to make it a little bit better. Because this is not really a lot of fun to drive.
All right, thank you.
But can you opt for something better this weekend with a few changes?
We'll try to make it better, but there are no guarantees to it improving a lot, but we'll see what we can do.
After attacking the microphone like he was attacking the track there, but he picked up a point, and that the thing with him is we're actually going to hear from him, I think, in the build-up to qualifying about just the way he performed yesterday. You talk about an old head on young shoulders. He's another one.
Absolutely. I think, to be honest, this next generation and the current sort of young generation we have are very impressive in that sense. Whatever the conditioning they go through when they go through the ranks of F3 and F2, because Arvid was also fast-tracked quite a lot in his career. He was jumped up the ranks very quickly, and you expect them to get to Formula One and it will be too much for them, but they seem to take it in their stride. Arvid, in that sense, is doing an incredible job, particularly at tracks he doesn't seem to know. He seems to get up to speed immediately. So he's got good people around him as well. I'm sure it'll come up later. He's got Oliver Rowland in his pocket. He's got a great trainer. He's got people with experience. And I think that helps him be able to kind of keep this grounded feel, because it's very easy to lose yourself in an environment like this.
Yeah, I think he's doing an amazing job, and I think that's shining through, and that point's very hard fought there, and hopefully he can take some of that performance into the next session and on to the race. But from Max Verstappen's side there, he finished over 5 seconds behind the car in front. He had very lonely race out there, big gap to the cars behind, didn't seem to be able to push that Red Bull forward, so hopefully they can make enough changes.
Bernie, in terms of the engineering going forward now for the rest of the weekend, with rain forecast for tomorrow, decisions to be made with qualifying here and then rain, different conditions tomorrow?
Yeah, so it's looking about 70% chance in the morning. It reduces a little bit through the day. What you would do if it was guaranteed wet is you would add more downforce to the car, because you want the load in the wet conditions. With it being let's say an average 50%, they might tweak in that direction but not go all the way on a full wet setup, because they are qualifying today in the dry. So you could compromise quali for a race, but let's see.
Okay, we shall see, but we've seen great gains actually by the top 4 teams. We saw it in Miami when mixing between the sprint and getting into qualifying and the race itself.